Welcome back to another episode of Fire Starters. I am so stoked for today's guest. I'm going to be transparent. This is an on the fly. Angela reached out to me through a group that we're both in. And when I saw her topic, I was like, I've got to talk to her about this. So this podcast is really focused on ordinary women doing extraordinary things for God as they step out in faith and obediently follow his call. And we will, I think, get into that, into your journey today, Angela, and hear a little bit about that. But we are going to go way off script today and give her an opportunity to be the expert that she is and to speak about her topic. So let me first introduce her to you. She is a challenger of the status quo and a disruptor of what has always been. Angela Griffith is known as the Christian sexpert to over 100,000 social media followers. She has dedicated over 20 years to the study of human sexuality and God's design for sex. Her passion is coaching women to discover a healthier relationship with their God-given sexuality. Angela's relationship with Jesus started at age 19, and while she wasn't raised in purity culture, she did get a heaping helping of it at college after her salvation experience. She has a unique perspective on how purity culture impacts marriages. She uses social media as a way to change the narrative from inside the house. She sees the damage of purity culture, but knows that God tells us he wants us to have abundance in all areas of our lives, including sex. She is a sex and intimacy coach and uses her social media platform to provide the sex education you wish you would have received. She has created multiple products designed to improve the sexual and non-sexual intimacies in your marriage. She will have you reaching for pearls to clutch, make you laugh, make you blush, and make you search your Bible asking, is she serious? It really says that. She and her husband have one child. She is a leader for the International Women's Ministry, Natural Christian Mamas, a homeschool mom, a lover of all things glitter. Hello, I love that. And ready to set you on a new path with your husband, telling you to go have good sex. I am so excited for this. Okay. So I promise I'm going to let you talk. You're going to talk a lot. I reached out so quickly
No
because
problem.
I had 2 conversations recently with close people. One was someone sharing with me that she had lost her confidence after gaining weight and lost her energy because she had gotten unhealthy and was not interested in sex anymore. Told her husband, I could never have sex again and I'll be just fine with that. And I was shocked to hear her say that because I know this person very well and know that that's not like her. Had another friend share that she and her husband haven't had sex since they conceived their last child, who is many years old now. And so, and then I just spoke to someone who said, my husband and I do not sleep in the same room. All these conversations are just converging in my world with these women. And I think this is a very important topic. So where would you have us start, Angela?
So, let's start with God's given us a gift of sex. And for a lot of women, it doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a burden or a curse. But one of the pillars of my platform is the statement, healthy women in safe marriages don't turn down good sex for no reason. So if there is an issue with the sexual relationship in your marriage, we need to look at those 3 things and figure out where the problem is originating. Healthy women. So is there depression or anxiety? Is there a physical issue? Is there a hormonal issue? Is there a history of trauma in your life? Sexual trauma, emotional trauma, trauma in the marriage, something like that. Healthy women in safe marriages. Are you safe to say no to sexual touch in your marriage? Are your body boundaries respected? Is your husband or your church or the women in your life weaponizing the Bible against you in order to coerce you into sexual touch you are not interested in? Are they
Wow.
saying things like, well, the Bible says you can't deprive him. If you don't give him enough sex, he's going to cheat. Oh, he's using pornography. Are you giving him enough sex? None of that is biblical and should not be used to coerce a woman into spreading her legs. So, healthy women in safe marriages don't just turn down good sex for no reason. Good sex. Is he good in bed? Does he prioritize her sexual pleasure? Does he make sure that she is orgasming as often as he is? In the evangelical world, there is a massive orgasm gap. I'm going to pull up the actual statistics here. 95% of men orgasm during a sexual encounter with their wife versus 49% of women. So if she's orgasming at about twice as less than he is, why should she want to have sex with him? So there is this narrative that women just don't like sex, and that's not true. Women are just as sexual as men are. We enjoy sex just as much. However, society and evangelical culture in particular demonizes and condemns and shames women who express their sexuality. Men are freely allowed and encouraged and socialized to express their sexuality, whereas women are condemned and shamed and then further condemned for not giving it to him as often, as if it's some sort of commodity for his consumption rather than a celebration of intimacy.
That was
a lot.
No, that is so good because, okay, so I automatically have questions. I love your 3 criteria. I love that. I've never thought about that ever. And so, okay, so let's say, because I'll share, I went through this when my thyroid was dying and I was on birth control. There was a season where that desire just, it was like, I don't know the word for it. Like I was non-human. Like there was nothing alive there. And so I had no desire and there was guilt. I felt guilt because I know, there's a need with my husband and he loves me and he wants to be close to me. He wants to share that intimacy. And so I felt like I know I should. It's the right thing to do. How does a woman even start that conversation and talk to her husband about what she's going through? Or even, I know men can go through depression as well. I mean, how do we even start that conversation?
So I think the first thing that needs to happen is how we are framing sexuality in our marriage in our own mind, right? Because I push back a lot on the statement that men need sex. A need cannot involve the use of someone else's body. A need is something that we are responsible for fulfilling on our own. Needs are things that keep us alive, and men don't die without orgasms.
Well,
the Bible actually calls everyone to self-control. The Bible does not say he's going to implode if he doesn't get to ejaculate, right? That's not biblical. And so if we are framing sex as a need, as a commodity that we have to supply, that is not the biblical model of sexuality in Christian marriage. That is a pornified view of female sexuality that the church has co-opted for its own uses. And so within ourselves, we must first define the role of sex in our marriage and the role of sex in our lives. We must discover who we are as a sexual being that God created us to be. And then we can take that healthy women in safe marriages don't turn down good sex for no reason and go to our spouse and say, hey, something's broken. Let's look at this and figure out where the brokenness is coming from and figure out how we can address the underlying issue. I have been known, I've had clients come to me and say, well, we are the definition of the orgasm gap. He is not prioritizing my orgasm, especially in young newlyweds where the woman has not yet learned how to orgasm. And so I really push back on them and I say, okay, well, if she hasn't yet learned how to orgasm, if you have together not yet learned how to ensure her orgasm, why is he still orgasming? Why is he still using her body to achieve orgasm if she's not getting anything from it? Why are you not taking his orgasm off the table while you learn to get her there? Because she's not safe to explore her full sensuality and sexuality if she's being pressured into a performance of making sure that he's achieving something that she is not.
Yeah, that's very true.
So the other thing is, one of the pillars of what I do is there's actually 12 different types of intimacy that we can experience in marriage. Sex is only one of them.
Right.
And sex is supposed to be the celebration of intimacy that you have already established and created before you ever reach the bedroom. So if you are not intentionally working on those other 11 types of intimacies, how can you celebrate anything with sexual intimacy? There's nothing to celebrate if that other 11 things are not already in existence. So if someone is struggling while you are working on the first part of, fixing your thyroid, getting off birth control, side note, that's a huge rant. Why do doctors not actually offer fully informed consent about the libido impact that birth control, anxiety, and depression medications have on female hormone libidos? The ADHD is taking over. Okay, so while you were addressing the first part of the issue, like fixing medical problems, getting therapy for trauma, whatever, intentionally working on the other 11 intimacies to build a foundation that you can then use to celebrate sexual intimacy is an important part of that process.
Okay, so then I have to ask, what are the other 11?
Yes. Let me pull up the list because again, the ADHD it takes over. Also, people don't realize that women who have ADHD, that affects their sexuality. Because if you can't focus in everyday life, it can be really hard to focus in the bedroom. All right, here we go. We've got aesthetic. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you. I'm focused.
Sorry, I'm not. It's always a circus with me. All right. Aesthetic, commitment, communication, conflict, creative, crisis, emotional, intellectual, recreational, sexual, spiritual, and work.
Oh, yes, I can see that. So already communication popped up in my mind as a big red flag because I know that's challenging for all of us to communicate. There's a book about it,
Yes.
I think. Everyone communicates, few connect. And so you're saying if we have an established success in those areas or an understanding where we're working together well in those other areas, it's going to be really challenging for us to have success in the bedroom. Yes?
Absolutely. So Sheila Ray Gregor, in her work, I think it's in her book, The Great Sex Rescue, describes sexual intimacy intimacy as into me you see. Intimacy requires a great level of vulnerability. And in our society, I already said men are socialized, conditioned to freely express their sexuality, but not their emotions, right? Women are socialized to freely express emotions, but not their sexuality. And we start to see conflict because men lack the emotional intelligence for real vulnerability, real intimacy, into me you see, and they rely on sexual intimacy to create and maintain intimacy in the marriage as a whole. And that is shortcutting the system. And because sexual intimacy cannot create or maintain real intimacy in a marriage. It's like building your house on shifting sand, right? It's like using one sort of building material to build a house. I can absolutely build a structure out of just bricks. But the first storm that comes, I'm going to get wet because there's no roof. The winds are going to knock the bricks over because there's no mortar holding them together, right? You need those other 11 intimacies to build the entirety of the house so that when the storm comes, the house doesn't get knocked over. You need all the building materials, not just one, to create intimacy.
That's good. That's good. Okay. So if you've, let's say you're doing well in the other 11, which would be a tall order, I think. Um and you feel healthy and you feel
Mm-hmm.
safe and you're not turning down good sex. In that situation, what do you think about husbands and wives sleeping in separate beds?
I think people think proximity equals intimacy, and it doesn't. There are tons of marriages where people sleep in separate beds. One of my best friends has a whole pile of small children that they co-sleep with. She does full-term nursing. And in order for them to both feel well rested through the night, they both sleep in separate beds with their children. You know, she's got a pile of kids in one room, he's got the other pile of kids in the other room, making sure, and they're both getting more sleep that way. And they have one of the healthiest sex lives that I know of. In fact, we're recording this during Amazon Prime Days, and she yesterday was like, "Hey, what's on sale on Prime Days? What should I get next from Amazon for spicy time?" Um, you know, they have one of the healthiest sex lives that because all of my friends, like, you're friends with the Christian sexpert. Of course, you're gonna ask and tell me all the things. Even when I have not, I never ask. People just tell me things. I don't ask. Like, I'm not like a weird friend who's like, "So tell me about your sex life." No, people are just like, "So Angela, here's this." Okay, we're doing coaching now. Cool. Um, right. But so they have slept in separate rooms for years, and they have a super healthy sex life because they are still intentional about their sexual connection outside of sleep. A bed is just for sleeping. You don't need a bed to have sex.
Yeah, that's
A bed
true.
is really just a place to sleep. Is it often more comfortable to have sex in a bed? Yeah. But there's a million other rooms in your house. Like, as long as you, and all of the intimacies require intention.
Mm.
Sexual intimacy flows easier when the other intimacies are being intentionally worked on, but sexual intimacy requires intention just as much as the other intimacies do. And sleeping in the same room equate, does not make intent happen,
Mm.
right? Is it easier to have sex if you're already in the same bed with no kids in it? Yes. But you still are making an intentional choice to have sex when you're sleeping in the same bed.
Right.
It's the intention that is driving it, not proximity.
Okay. So here's what I'm learning so much from you right now. So much. You're breaking down, like, it's not like I don't feel resistance to what you're sharing. I feel that I've never questioned my what my perception or what I've been taught. I just haven't questioned it. So hearing,
No,
first of all, that those three
it's
criterias,
literally the first line of my bio comes.
yeah, you did have that
The
disclaimer. You
challenger of
did.
what has always been.
You do. You do. But
I
I
did.
can't say, as I'm listening to you, I can't say I disagree. I don't. I Everything you've said makes sense to me. And that the criteria of feeling safe, that's huge. Having your needs met, I think that is evidence of how Christ loves the church, the selfless love and sacrificial love of, this is something that is joint. It's not just about me or just about you, that there's a togetherness. And if that togetherness isn't the same experience, it needs to be addressed. And our culture just kind of has this
Mhm.
mindset of, well, I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, men are different. They're going to have orgasms more than women. Oh, well. But you're right. It needs to be attended to. And then you talked about intentionality in all areas of intimacy. That's good. That's needed. I think there have been times where I felt resistance to be intimate with my husband, and I can't really place why I feel that way. But if I go back and reflect, it's usually, honestly, this is so sad. It's usually because we haven't talked enough. Hello, podcast host. I'm a talker.
Mhm.
So I'll I'll need I'll need to have like I'm like I need to talk. Can we talk first? And of course, my husband's amazing. So maybe that's why this is easier for me to talk to, but I know or talk about, but I know there are women out there where though all three of those things that you mentioned are a miss for them. And so
Mhm.
here's what I'd love to ask you. As a coach, what is the biggest conflict or disconnect that you see in marriages?
Usually it's a drive disparity where the man is wanting sex to happen more often than the woman does. And that goes back to a lot of the things that we've already talked about where, he um is using sex to try to create and maintain emotional intimacy because he really has not been taught, because society failed him. He's not been taught how to create and maintain intimacy outside of sexual performance. And too many men have their identity wrapped up in their sexual performance and are using that, to prop up their ego, or, using that to try and feel connect. Like he might become genuinely trying to come from a good place in, I want to feel connected to my wife, but he doesn't know how to do that outside of his sexual performance. And so one of the things that we need to do in coaching is we look at the framework of the 12 intimacies and we create a plan for genuine connection outside of the bedroom, so that when it comes time to get to the bedroom, that all flows so much more easily. Because if you put the focus on there's not enough sex happening, she's going to put the brakes on, and she's going to have resistance because she's feeling pressured and coerced to perform. She's feeling as though her sexuality has become a commodity for his consumption. Whereas if the focus is on the other 11 intimacies, that last sexual intimacy flows so naturally.
That makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. So, okay, first of all, after these conversations that I've had with these women and just learning so much in such a short time from you, I'm thinking everybody needs a sex coach. And how can they get in touch with you? How can they get connected? Because that's a safe space, one, to start the conversation, but even more importantly, to know where to start the work so that it can get better. Because, right, good sex is at the end of this. We want to get to
Yes.
that. So, how can they connect with you?
Yes. People accuse me. Yes, they can connect with me on my website, thechristiansexpert.com. I am the Christian Sexpert on all the socials. And yeah, one of the things that I get accused of a lot is, oh, you just hate sex. Oh, you just hate sex because you're fat, so you're not having sex. Oh, you just hate men. No, I hate the way society has treated men. I think men are so much better than the narrative that we have in society and evangelical culture. I
Mm.
think because like there's this narrative in evangelical culture, men need sex every 3 days. That's not biblical. That's not scientific. That's nowhere. That's made up, right? And I think men can use the fruit of the spirit and use self-control and love their wives well. And they're not just these mindless slaves to their sexual drive, right? And because that's what you're really saying. If a man needs sex every 3 days, you're calling him a mindless animal who can't control himself. And that's not what I see modeled in the Bible, right? So it's not that I hate sex. I want people to be having good sex. I go have good sex is literally my social media tagline. It's my email signature. I want you to have all the orgasms, but I want it to be like biblically mutually connecting and making things better. And so that's like my biggest passion in coaching is helping you. And I like my personality is um I don't want to sit with a client for 6 months and talk about their feelings and how their childhood trauma like affects their feelings about the dirty dishes. Like I want you to have practical steps to walk out of a coaching session that you can implement tonight to start feeling like you are making progress.
Mm-hmm.
Practical ways to work on the things that you are both going to enjoy and feel closer afterwards.
Yes. That's so a good coach moves you forward. That's what a good coach does. And it sounds like that's exactly what you set your clients up to do, is to identify what that next good a step that makes sense, that's going to
Mhm.
help bring them closer and have that connection and that real intimacy.
Yes. Yep. Yep. I always email my clients after a session a plan that includes the action steps, the things that we talked about, because I know I have ADHD. I walk out of coaching sessions and I'm like, I don't remember a thing that we just talked about. What was I supposed to do? So I always email my clients. These are the practical steps that you guys are going to work on before we meet again to start feeling more connected. And it's not like so many coaches are talking about things like you guys need to take quarterly weekend retreats together. I homeschool a kid with special needs who is in like multiple extracurricular activities. I don't have the time or money to be taking quarterly retreats with my husband. I need free, low cost things, practical things that I can do in between karate lessons, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's the kind of stuff that I'm giving my clients is stuff that they can fit in 15-minute increments throughout the week. Because who has hundreds of dollars to go on quarterly retreats and weekly date nights? I don't.
Right. Well,
I'm not
that
making I'm not making influencer money yet. I'm making homeschool mom, karate mom, and with money. Okay, all my money goes to the karate studio. I need like Netflix and chill money dates.
yes. I'm so glad that you brought that up too, though, Angela, because we've heard that before, my husband and I'm a perfectionist. So I'm like, okay, let's get the calendar out. And once a week, we're going to fit in this date. Okay. And then a
Mhm.
quarter is this many months. So which month could we do it? Has never stayed consistent. We have not had a quarterly date ever in our lives. And then I feel like a failure. And I'm like, but the ball still needs to move forward. We still have to get this better
Mhm.
in our marriage. And we're like, we got to go now. We got to start this now in day to day life. And also, I think you can go on that quarterly retreat and have maybe work on one or two of those intimacies, and that's it, and feel like you've done so much. But is it going to transfer when you get back home, or will it be left in that moment that doesn't reflect real life? Right. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
There are more topics that I'm going to have you back. I feel confident my listeners are going to want you back. I'm probably going to hear, Hillary, when are you going to have that sex coach back on? Because I've got some questions for her. So some of the topics I know that I wanted to get to. One of them was um, how to have conversations about like what you want in the bedroom, and opening things up to have that safe conversation and feel safe to say, hey, I would like this. Are you into that? Would that work? I want to get into that. And then also, because we have children, we have 4 children, you have a child, what you talk about with purity in the church, like how do we talk to our children about this and model it? You know what I mean by model it. All those other
Yeah.
intimacies, right, can be modeled, right? Communication. And what does that
Yes.
look like? Because I do feel like the way I was raised, I did not see any of those 11 or 12 or any, not one modeled correctly.
Yeah.
So I definitely entered my marriage in a deficit. And I want to steward my children well in this and what they see, and then also know that we can talk about it. So that is something I think we need to come back and revisit. What do you think?
Absolutely. I would love to.
Awesome. I cannot thank you enough for this, Angela. I learned so much. I should have known that I would by your bio. Um, and I definitely want to have you back. And I just have to say, fire starters, you may not want to admit this, but you've been challenged today. You've probably also been encouraged today. So you need to go find Angela on social media, check out her website, and connect with her. If you're struggling in any one of these areas, go connect, because what I've heard today is it doesn't have to stay that way.
Absolutely. There are practical things that you can do today to start making changes.
I love that. Well, thank you. And I will have you back, my friend.
Thank you. Go have good sex.
Amen. Okay, it is stopping. That was so fun. I know there was a lag. You did